Where exactly would you rank this in the pantheon of Bill Paxton movies? Is it pretty high up there or what?
You're referring to the time when I said that Sam Neill was the rich man's Bill Paxton?
I believe, yes. You compared the two of them together, which is absurd. They don't look anything alike or sound anything alike or do any of the same things.
Yeah, I don't know why I conflated those two. Obviously, Sam Neill to me is Jurassic Park.
Sure,
right?
Yeah, it's most well known for.
And I don't think I had a place for Bill Paxton before we started doing this.
There's always a place for Bill Paxton, let's be honest here.
Well, obviously, he's sort of grown on me as we sort of recorded our first season there.
Yeah, well, he'd have to. I mean, come on. He's just so great at playing sleazeballs. But none of him today, just Sam Neill, I'm afraid. Welcome to Bad Movies and Beer. I'm Cooper.
And I'm Nolan.
And today, this is maybe going to be another controversial one. We're talking about Event Horizon.
We haven't done a lot of sort of horror. There's a little bit of horror, but this is sort of like space sci-fi
horror, yeah.
Yeah, this is sort of one of the first times I can think of us doing a movie like this.
Maybe not a terrible movie. We're going to get to our ratings later on, but I know this is a lot of people really like this, and a lot of people kind of think that this was like an overlooked, because it kind of bombed at the box office, right? Like that maybe this was kind of a not bad in terms of production, just bad in terms of performance. So,
It's interesting. Very early in this movie, and actually throughout a lot of it, I was quite enthralled, enjoying it. I thought there was some decent cinematography, some good sound and music effects. It does sort of come off the rails for me, and we'll get to that as we go through.
And of course, as always, we will be drinking a themed beer. And, we've had some close calls before where I'm like, hard to get one more accurate than this for a connection. But this is just, literally.
Yeah. So sometimes we kind of stretch it to make the theme of the movie and the beer fit together. But today was quite easy. We are going to be drinking Event Horizon.
The beer is literally called Event Horizon. That one was a slam dunk.
It even has a sweet picture of sort of a circle that looks sort of like a black hole. It kind of looks like some of the stuff that we see in the movie. And this is from Halo Brewery in Toronto, Ontario.
Yeah, a very popular brewery known by many people in the area. Not really my style, though. They don't do a lot of stuff that I enjoy. And I can tell you right now, I'm not looking forward to this one.
That's super funny. I love Halo. It is one of my favorites. I've been to it a couple times in person, and they're just sort of a small brew shop. They have a really creative team that makes beers that I love. This one's kind of special because it's a stout that is brewed with sarsaparilla. So that's sort of
It's the root beer thing, right?
Yeah, the root beer flavoring. So
fuck.
I'm excited to try it. We haven't drank a lot of stouts on here. We kind of stick to a lot of pilsners. We had a lot of honey browns. We've had quite a few IPAs.
You forced a lot of IPAs on me, yeah, sours.
So I'm excited to do something a little bit different today. And we'll talk about sort of how we feel about it at the end of the movie.
Yeah, I think we should get into it, though. Let's get this shit over with.
It's going to be delicious.
So we open with the Paramount Pictures logo, which transitions into a view of outer space with some tense music. There's some sort of a spiral wormhole type effect that we end up heading towards. The credits kind of zoom into the wormhole. And I have to say, expecting a full-blown horror movie, this is already tonally, way different than what I thought this was.
Yeah, it sounds very industrial. I'm getting sort of it sounded like a Nine Inch Nails.
Oh, the music is so 90s for this. Yeah. It's really late 90s. Yeah.
Well, and the movie kind of finishes with Prodigy, I think.
Is that who it was?
Yeah, I think it's a Prodigy
too.
song at the end that finishes. So that pulled me in, right? I was into that stuff. So I like the mood that's being set really quickly.
As the man who owns more 90s CDs than any human being on earth.
It's possible. I might own them all.
I own a lot. Speaking of dates, we get some dates here very quickly. We find out that in 2015, the first permanent colony is established in the moon. 2032, commercial mining begins on Mars. 2040, deep space research vessel Event Horizon launches to explore the boundaries of the solar system, but she disappears without a trace beyond the 8th planet, Neptune. It is the worst space disaster on record, so take that, Challenger explosion.
Don't know where to go from there.
It just seems to me
they're
not dead. The people in the Challenger were dead. That to me seems worse because they're dead.
Well, I think the assumption with the Event Horizon is that everyone was gone and dead, but Yes. What was interesting to me was that very first point, too. The 2015, a colony has been created on the moon.
I know. I love when sci-fi shoots for like what at the time seemed like a possible market. They just completely miss it.
Yeah, and we're not anywhere near that at this point.
Oh,
It
fuck
feels
no.
like so. It's kind of funny when you date those kind of things. But yeah, it's interesting. So we have the event horizon go missing at 2040, and it puts us to 2047, 7 years later.
That's the now, it says. We get a CG asteroid just whooshing past. We see a spaceship floating in orbit around a stormy-looking planet. Inside the ship, many CG objects are floating around, along with a skinned body, and it screams. And we zoom into his mouth and out from the eye of Sam Neill. It's a pretty cool transition, actually. I like that transition between scenes there.
This is sort of the start of where there's lots of events that appear to be hallucinations or dreams. And sometimes it's hard to grasp right away whether it's reality or not. And I think that's intentional to try to sort of keep you on your toes throughout.
Did you know that it wasn't Bill Paxton when he was staring forlornly at that picture of his wife?
No.
That's not a Bill Paxton
no.
move. Sleazy Bill Paxton would not. He'd have like a picture of like just some on his thing.
So it does sort of show him very early looking at a picture of his wife. This is a theme in Bad Movies and Beer. A lot of our protagonist characters have a longing for a lost loved one.
There's a lot of damaged relationships in these movies.
Yeah.
Now, just in case anyone can't figure out how he's feeling, he says, "I miss you" out loud. They're just fucking spelling it out for us. Gotta love it. He's on the space station Daylight orbiting Earth, but he's quickly summoned to the Lewis and Clark, a search and rescue vessel with a top secret mission that was docked at the station. They're going out in search of the event horizon, but the crew isn't exactly excited about that. This is where we meet Captain Miller. Larry Fishburne tells him to quit complaining. They've got their orders. They know how this works.
I have a question about the ship name, Lewis and Clark.
Go for it.
Is that a reference to...
They're explorers, right?
Right? It is, yeah. That's just the idea, is that it's a message for, like, they're exploring outer reaches of space.
100%. Now, Sam Neill is on board, but he is getting kind of a frosty reception from the captain. Before we can delve too far into that, we get a bit of sci-fi world building when they have to put crew members into gravity tanks to prevent their skeletons from being liquefied when the ion cannons fire. It's like,
yeah, there's a lot of... I actually feel like they do a pretty good job of building a believable sci-fi reality. Definitely for the first 3/4 of this movie. There's obviously things that you could question very quickly, and depending on your knowledge of physics, you could dismiss immediately. But I felt like they do a good job of explaining it to an average audience, right? In terms of that sci-fi connection.
See, to me, this felt like they were just like checking things on a list, though. Like this was like one sentence was just like, quickly, let's mention like 8 or 9 different sci-fi things so we can gain some credibility with the fucking nerd contingent.
That's fair. It does feel like Sam Neill's character. That's kind of all he does for the first third of the movie, right?
Yes. Now they go in these tanks into suspended animation. We get a dream sequence. Sam Neill hears a familiar voice. He exits the tank and goes looking for her. He finds his wife naked, sitting on one of the chairs of the bridge. She says, "I'm waiting," and she's got no eyes, which is going to be another recurring thing in this movie. And just side note, super fucking creepy. For some reason, the things with no eyes just like terrifying to me.
I actually wrote down that this scene was super creepy as well. So
yeah,
I felt that same experience. The eyeless person waiting for him was interesting. This is sort of the second time he has kind of a weird dream related to things that are happening on the ship. And you're kind of wondering if he's unstable based on that relationship or if there's something else going on here.
Well, after we get a quick jump scare, someone grabs him from behind. He wakes up screaming in the tank, but they shrug this off as standard gravity tank disorientation. To your point, I'm thinking like maybe not. Mind you, I also have the benefit of having seen like the previews for this movie. So I'm like, there's weird shit happening, easy to write that off immediately.
At that time, we get another crew member throwing down a good sex joke.
Yeah, so this is, you imagine we're meeting the rest of the crew. We get a quick go-around of what everyone else does, except for the one you're talking about. His name is Cooper.
I love that, by the way. Of
no
course,
relation, I don't think.
Yeah, the sort of pervy guy in the ship is named Cooper.
Yeah. He, like, earlier was aggressively flirting with one of them on the ship and was offering people coffee and asked her, "How would you like something hot and black inside you?" Like, innuendo much? Come on.
Yeah, that's just straight up, yeah.
Yeah, very much so. It's also time for the crew to figure out exactly what their mission is. Turns out they were supposed to be on leave, which explains the general level of disgruntledness. Sure enough, they are there to rescue the Event Horizon. Now, if you were on this ship, would you believe that it was still out there 7 years later?
Well, everything they've heard is that it has disappeared or it's gone or it's been destroyed. And I think they also suggest that other ships that have went to look for it have had some pretty bad things happen to them. So I would not be excited about going after this ship.
Yeah. We learn about the ship at this point. Turns out it has the ability to travel at light speed, kind of. What it actually does is create a dimensional gateway that makes traveling between two places instantaneous. So more nerd talk for the sci-fi people.
And this is Sam Neill going off again. He basically describes it as folding space itself and putting a hole between two places.
He demonstrates it by folding a picture of a naked lady and putting a hole through the...
Yeah, the person whose poster it was not happy.
That would have been Bill Paxton. If Bill Paxton had been in this movie, that would have been him. Hey, man, that's my nudie mag. So Dr. Sam Neill is the guy who designed this ship, and he attempts to explain this with kind of like mixed results.
The singularity.
Layman's terms.
Well, fuck layman's terms. Do you speak English?
He's me in this movie. Like, not like me, literally. I'm like, this is like, come on, man. Get the sci-fi stuff out of the way. Let's get to the horror stuff. Stop world building.
I'm enjoying some of the explanations. I'm one of those people who does want it to make sense to me. So I'm okay with some of that as we're going through. After he sort of explains this stuff, he also shares with them a really creepy transmission.
Yes. It was the only transmission received from the ship before they lost contact. And basically it's a bunch of screaming and demon sounds. We also hear that if they can successfully pull off this rescue, it would be the first time ever this far away from Earth. All other attempts have resulted in the loss of both ships. So the crew, not exactly optimistic. Luckily, that horrific recording is going to put them at ease. All the fucking screaming and demon sounds.
Yeah, and it's funny because Weir does not seem worried at all. I feel really strange about Sam Neill's character right here because like everyone else is kind of concerned and he's just so excited to be going to the ship. To me, he has a motivation beyond trying to rescue people who are there. Like it seems to me like the ship is his baby in a way, right? Like he needs to go and know what happened to it and figure it out.
Oh yeah, there's the lure there for sure. He's got some connection and he's operating on a different level than everybody else. Now, aside from the screaming and horrific sounds, there's maybe some Latin in there. One guy on the ship whose name is DJ, he recognizes the phrase "save me." And yeah, I would feel just fucking great about being on this mission. It sounds good. It's a win.
You know that this is going to get dark, right? You're going to a place and you can tell that something really bad happened on the event horizon. So yeah, I'd be very nervous about that. I'd definitely sort of make sure I didn't fall into any horror movie tropes.
Yeah, none of those, no. We get right to it from there. They approach the ship through some stormy space weather, I guess. And when they find it, its name is all lit up like a billboard. You know, in case they confused it with some other giant ship floating around Neptune. Like, what the fuck? Come on.
And they have this sort of dramatic, like, space dorm kind of entry to make it feel like, oh, they're going to crash at the very last second. I also noted here, because I thought it was hilarious, so they're all kind of in their stations on the sort of part of the ship where they control everything. And the captain's chair is this hilarious thing that like swings around and hangs from the top.
That comes into play later for sure.
Yeah, I thought it was a funny choice at this moment when I'm here, and it does come into play after, right, to help add some drama. But I just thought that was a hilarious decision. Like everything else is locked into the ground, and the captain's chair is kind of spinning.
It's the fucking Star Trek, like Captain Kirk swivel, essentially.
It's very much like it feels like they borrowed a little bit of that
to
build this sort of bridge.
So they scan for life forms on the event horizon, and they pick some up, but they can't get an exact location, which is weird. So they're going to board the ship. Now, Sam Neill is desperate to be a part of that, but Captain Fishburne wants him to stay on the bridge. They have a quick little dick measuring contest there. The captain gets his way, and Sam Neill has to stay on the bridge and talk them through the boarding. Now, he does this, and they discover a few things. For example, a ton of explosive devices designed to split the ship in half in the event of emergency, which will obviously come into play later.
Yes, you can tell that they're still working and active because they have blinking lights.
Yep, they have to let you know this is going to be a thing.
They definitely talk about it. This is where they get on the ship. I think only 3 of the crew head on there to go explore it, and they decide immediately to split up.
Yeah, classic. Yep.
What the fuck?
You know what? But I think in this case, I'm kind of okay with this because nothing really comes of it, and they're doing this in a way to build tension because we watch this, we recognize this is the dumbest thing you can do, horror movie trope, someone's going to get picked off and murdered, and so we become this kind of like, when's it going to happen? Like it kind of catches.
No, it is true. Like it definitely built tension. It definitely made me more interested to see what would happen. It baffles me that people would make that choice on a ship where they heard like demonic horror sounds and save me.
Yeah, maybe stick together. Also, do any of them have like weapons? Did anyone bring like a gun, like anything? They're just kind of walking through there like by themselves. I don't know.
No, they're wearing their spacesuits. They've got these really cool lights that also scan for life signals and things in there. I thought that was kind of neat. I like that science sci-fi that they put in there.
Yeah, we also see some other things that they fan out throughout the ship. We see kind of like a spinning meat grinder looking tunnel for traveling between containment levels. There's evidence of a coolant leak of some kind, and there's also a shit ton of blood, gore, and skulls that one lady completely misses because she's distracted by a tiny bit of blood on the counter. That's fucking hilarious to me. She's like, oh, I got that little blood, guys. And you see behind her, just fucking like gore all over the wall.
Yeah, this is in the bridge, right? And you see like, yeah, the skeletons and blood and gore sort of stuck to the top of the ship. And we do find out that it's really cold on there, so it's kind of all frozen. It's funny that she's walking around that captain's room and she goes to look for the log, right? They tell her to go there and she hits the button and what pops out?
I have no clue. I don't remember.
Like a fucking CD.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry, yeah.
And so I was like, at that time, the log is a disc, like a CD or DVD or Blu-ray or whatever and I'm just like, oh my goodness, that would not be the case in 2040.
Well, again, it's guesswork. They thought we'd be on the moon like 6 years ago.
But then we'd still be using CDs to record shit?
I don't know. That's a good point.
I don't know.
We also get a couple jump scares in here. First, there's a floating glove that frightens Captain Fishburne, and then a mangled corpse, which, much like the woman in Sam Neill's dream, is missing its eyes. Very suspicious. Now I'm kind of like, is he predicting this? Is there actually some kind of connection here where he's being transported, like visions of whatever?
It was funny the way they cut these because I actually felt more scared or stressed out in the jump scare with Fishburne.
Okay, you're more invested in Fishburne?
I don't know. The glove scared me. And then the other one where this corpsicle like floated across towards her, I don't know. I don't know if it was just the way it was cut or the way that the acting was performed, but I was more scared by the first rather than the latter.
Well, Fishburne's a much, much better actor than whoever that lady is. No offense to her.
So this is about the time where stuff starts feeling weird to me, right? And this is where Weir wants to get back on the ship. That's Sam Neill's character. And I start questioning, I'm like, is he evil? And is this ship like alive and has a relationship with him? This starts coming to me at this point.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering earlier. Now, there's a different guy in this boarding party who I don't know the answer to this. Maybe you know the answer to this. His name is Justin.
That's his last name.
Okay, so I was going to say, I thought it was his first name, but then they call him Mr. Justin later. Have you ever heard of anyone with the last name Justin?
No, you're right. But yeah, it was his last name for sure.
Either way, he finds the gravity core and is getting some weird readings from it. Suddenly, the ship loses contact with him, and the gravity core opens up, revealing some kind of black liquid. When he reaches out to touch it, it pulls him in, and shit starts going down. Cooper quickly springs into action to rescue him, and while he's doing that, there's a weird surge that knocks Captain Fishburne down and causes a whole bunch of equipment explosions and a hull breach on the Lewis and Clark. We're right into the action.
Yeah, this is a really dramatic scene, and it happens really fast. We're kind of in this interesting exploration mode where they're off and they're trying to figure stuff out. He gets to this really interesting room, which we learn is sort of the place where you're able to fold space, but it opens up a portal on his own, and he gets sucked in, like you say, and then, yes, all of a sudden we go from this sort of calm, searching, tense moment to explosions and shit hitting the fan. It was interesting that sort of shock that came out of it knocked everyone down, but then really fucked up the Lewis and Clark. In fact, they even have to get everybody off of it onto the Event Horizon.
That ship is fucked. So they jump on board the Event Horizon, like you said. Unfortunately, in addition to having no radio, which means they have no way to call for help, they've only got enough breathable air for 20 hours. So they need to scramble to repair the Lewis and Clark. While this is going on, Cooper tries to explain what he saw when he saved Justin, the open gravity drive in the dark liquid, but Sam Neill says it's impossible because the drive was off and couldn't open the gateway itself. Now, he says this, but his facial expressions at different times during this whole disaster make me think he knows something that he is not telling everybody.
Well, in Lawrence Fishburne, I think it's Nelson is his character name, definitely sort of catches on to this, right? He calls him out for it. He says, you're hiding shit, right? You know more than you're letting on. And it's interesting here. This is where it's really compounding our kind of beliefs that Weir is in on this, right? Like he almost seems to be trying to let the ship or the thing do what it wants to do, and he really wants to find out what's going to happen.
Yeah, and to your point, Lawrence Fishburne calls him on it. He's like, this is, something's going on here. He has bullshit excuses, Sam Neill does. He says that, either Mr. Justin is delusional or that what he saw was an optical illusion caused by gravity distortion. When he kind of presses him on it, Sam Neill is like, it's complicated, but then they won't take no for an answer. He explains that he created a black hole to get the power to create the gateway, but it's perfectly safe. Yeah, it seems like it. Yeah, it seems like everything's fine.
He knows it's not fucking safe.
No.
And he doesn't give a fuck. He's evil, man. I don't know if he's evil, but he is a scientist without ethics, right? There's no morals here. He just wants to see what his cool space bending ship can do.
He is so for that ship. He just fucking loves it. Captain Lawrence Fishburne points out his ship is all jacked up. One of his crewmen might not wake up, but as soon as he says he might not wake up, we get a bit of eye activity from Mr. Justin. Right as that happens, the doctor in the room with him also starts hearing a strange kind of like scraping, hissing sound. It's coming from underneath a tarp, and when she lifts it, she sees a kid. He says, "Mommy," and his legs are covered in open wounds. Jump scare. This is one of the crew members, though.
Yeah, there's a lot of jump scares in this. I had seen this once before, so this is my second time watching it, and I had remembered several jump scares. So when you kind of prepare yourself for them, it doesn't feel the same way. But I thought the building of the creepiness and the way they delivered them was pretty interesting. I started asking, like, what's causing these hallucinations? How are they all doing this? And also, why are they putting themselves in places where they're alone still? I know they got to take care of Mr. Justin, but they got to figure out like a buddy system here.
Mr. Justin.
I know, it's such a weird, and he's like a young kid too, right? Like he's their sort of engineering guy, but he's got to be early 20s or something. So calling him Mr. Justin sounds even more ridiculous.
It does, yeah. Either way, this was all an illusion. They access the ship's final log. Now, this seems quite pleasant till right at the very end where there's some distortion and what clearly sounds like people screaming. They're going to analyze this footage some more, but they're interrupted by two things. A power drain, which seems to be coming from the core, and Mr. Justin having some kind of seizure and coming too long enough to warn the crew that the dark is coming. Creepy.
Yeah, this is weird. It's hard for him to describe it, right? But he's basically communicating to them that their worst nightmares are on their way.
Yeah, Sam Neill goes to check some kind of circuit board, but suddenly he hears something strange. First a sound, then his name, and finally, as the lights begin to flicker off and on, his eyeless wife is back saying, "Be with me forever." At the same time, a flaming fiery body rises from the gravity core right in front of Captain Fishburne. The body opens its eyes, but does nothing. So these hallucinations are just spreading, man. Everyone's seeing them.
They're all being impacted by them. Something's going on with them. I don't know if it's sort of the lack of oxygen they're getting in this ship. Is it the ship itself? What's happening here?
It's conference time. Captain and the doctor share their hallucinations, but Sam Neill keeps his to himself. He doesn't want to tell anybody, which again, I'm like, what is this fucking guy up to?
He's got his own agenda, and it is not protecting the people on this ship.
Now, the crew starts coming unglued here, as even the members who haven't hallucinated can tell that something fucked up is going on. One crew member, Stark, she's the British lady who Cooper was hitting on earlier, has a theory. The energy readings and the hallucinations are linked. The ship is reacting to the crew being on board, kind of like an immune system, because the ship brought something back with it. A life force, which my immediate thought was, how great would it be if this was a sequel to Life Force and the sexy space vampire showed up? I'm like, oh my God, that'd be great.
Oh my, if it transitioned that way, yeah, we're still waiting for that Life Force sequel, and this would have been great if that's where it went. It was interesting when she put forward that point because he was willing to listen to the other people's perspectives, but Fishburne fucking shits all over her for that perspective. Like he doesn't even consider it, and I'm just like, what is happening here? She's sort of second in command on this ship, and he just shits all over her. He even tells her that she's doing nothing, right? Like I thought it was funny that she kind of had figured it out, and then he just crapped all over her, even though he was willing to believe other people's sort of weird hallucinations and stories.
Don't know. No respect for Stark. He'll gain respect for her by the end of this movie. Spoilers. Either way, back in the medical bay, Mr. Justin has gone missing. The doctor hears a banging sound coming from a door marked biohazard, but before she can investigate, there's an explosion from the roof and sparks rain down on her. She freaks out and runs, but it turns out nobody heard anything until the banging sound starts again on the bridge. Now, Sam Neill, who suddenly is looking full-blown crazy, says open the door to nobody in particular and starts walking towards it, but Stark subdues him. Thank goodness.
Yeah, this is really strange, and I felt that this was kind of unexplained too. I guess the explanation for it is it was a hallucination, right? But so much of when you're watching this movie, it's hard to tell what's really happening to them and what is something that's just happening sort of in all of their heads. But this seemed to me like the first shared hallucination.
Yeah, I'm almost kind of wondering if this, like, having a hard time tracking what's real and what's not real, like, it's good for building tension, but I kind of wonder if that's why this sort of underperformed at the box office. I wonder if people were kind of like, I can't track this shit, and just bailed because they're lazy.
It didn't make immediate sense, so they didn't want to put forth the effort.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. Suddenly, there's an alert from the forward airlock. Mr. Justin is in there, and he's not wearing a spacesuit. He's going to blast himself out into the cold vacuum of space. Captain Fishburne's on the way to rescue him, and the doctor tries to talk him down, but he asks her,
"Did you hear it?"
Yes, I heard it. Do you know what it is?
It shows you things. Horrible things.
His description is creepy, but this scene confirms my suspicions from earlier. This dude is not a good actor. Mr. Justin is not. He's not strong.
He's young. He's just getting into the game, I think, probably, right?
Well, he's no Lawrence Fishburne, I'll tell you that right now. She tells Mr. Justin to open the door, the inner door, of course. And for a second, it seems like he might, but then his finger slides over to the outer door button, which is like hilarious to me. Like he's actually like reaching towards inner door and just decides to pivot over.
Yeah,
God damn it.
Whatever he saw or experienced going through that portal really fucked him up and doesn't want to experience it again. So he's going to end it by opening up the door and getting sucked into the vacuum of space.
But this is a very lengthy process. In every other movie you see in space, they open the outer door, he's like immediately sucked out. He presses the button, he immediately starts screaming. But that's strange because the door isn't going to open for another 25 seconds.
It's interesting because he's sort of, what seems to happen is it's almost like he's under the control of something else when he hits it, and then he goes to a moment of clarity. He realizes, like, he kind of regains himself, and he realizes that he doesn't want it all to end right now, and it's too late because he's hit that button.
Yeah, he kind of does go back to normal, and, good for him, I guess, but that door is going to open. Now, we get some pretty bad effects here as the blood starts pouring out of his eyes, and, like, he slowly floats out into space as the door opens up. I was like, this looks fake as shit.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because there's this idea, right? If you don't have your compression suit or you're not in the space station, if you go out into the vacuum of space, yeah, you're going to basically explode. What's kind of ridiculous, well, it is a ridiculous scene. So he starts getting sucked out into space. His veins start sort of coming out of his body. His eyes explode. And his captain maneuvers his way through space, catches him in midair, and brings him back into the spot where he can close it out. He doesn't die. He doesn't explode. It's not
Apparently he's going to be okay, but it sure did not look like that.
He looks real bad.
He's got a long road back, is what I'm hearing. Yeah. Now, Captain Lawrence Fishburne is hot about this whole situation. He demands answers from Sam Neill. He tries to blame the strange noises on thermal changes in the hull, which caused the metal to expand and contract. Bullshit, says Fishburne. He actually says bullshit like that. But it's starting to look like Sam Neill might not really know what's going on after all. To be fair, I don't think very many scientists would come up with my gravity core opened a literal gateway to hell as a hypothesis. That seems like a bridge too far for a lot of men of science.
I agree, but it does seem like he has a relationship with the ship. Like, I think those hallucinations of his wife seem to me, or are starting to convince me, that it's the ship talking to him. Right? They're using his sort of memories to try to communicate or build that relationship.
Like Mr. Justin said, it shows you the most terrifying things, right? It knows your secrets.
And he wants to know more, right? Like most people, I think, would want to run from that shit, as Justin tried to do or end it. But Weir seems intrigued, like he has to follow this through.
That's really a testament to how good a scientist he is. Seriously, it's a scientist mindset. They want to know that shit. They want to know what's going on.
Well, it also serves a testament to scientists being willing to cross all kinds of ethical boundaries to do what they want to find out.
What's funny is he was so against that practice in Jurassic Park.
Yes, you're right.
Wasn't he?
Absolutely. Yeah. He was. Yeah, he was not willing to cross. Or actually, was he willing to cross it? But it was what's his name's character who wasn't willing to cross it.
I think the old man had already crossed it and he was against it. Yeah.
You're right. Old man had definitely crossed it, but to me, it was the fly.
Jeff Goldblum?
Yeah, Jeff Goldblum was the one who wanted to stop that practice, right? He was the one who wanted.
Fly.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. That's
God damn it.
Yeah.
God help us, declares Fishburne after hallucinating the voice of a young crewman he lost on a mission from his younger days. That was the guy who got out of the pit in the fucking gravity chamber earlier. Now, see, he's never told anyone this before about the young crewman, but the ship knew. It knows their secrets. It knows their fears. He tells this to DJ, the guy who caught the Latin in that horrifying transition from earlier. Now, it turns out that DJ has a secret too. He got the translation wrong. He thought it said, save me, but actually it said, save yourself. Not only that, it said, save yourself from hell. Whoops.
That's not really a mistaken one. I mean, it's not really
about
his
as bad
fault.
as you could possibly botch that.
Yeah, they were coming anyway, so like maybe it's better they didn't know what they were going to face. But it's at this point where I'm like, they need to fucking explode this shit with themselves on it. Like, there's no getting out of here. Like, I know that that's not the solution that any of those people want. But if you really want to save humanity, you got to fucking torch this motherfucker right now.
Well, but hang on. Right then, they're interrupted by Cooper, who tells them they're ready to repressurize the Lewis and Clark. They are getting out of there.
But you shouldn't. Like, you know that this ship is fucked. It is causing a whole bunch of problems.
Yeah.
You got to at least explode the event horizon.
Well, sure. And I think that's what Captain Lawrence Fishburne wants to do. Sam Neill's not on board with that, obviously. They should be good to go in about 20 minutes. But first, before that happens, we get more footage from the ship's logs. And this is what I would describe as a gorgy. It's people like attacking, killing, eating each other. Now, I think I saw some sex in there, maybe a little bit. And one guy holding what appears to be his own eyeballs ripped from his skull. Sounds like my honeymoon.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, it goes by really fast. Like, there's not a lot to see, and there's a lot there's a lot of images. I actually looked up a little bit about the movie after I watched it, and there's a much longer, much clearer extended cut of this scene. It was removed. It was shown to the sort of higher ups, the producers, the people, and they were just like, what the fuck?
I can't show this.
It's interesting. I think fans of the genre and movie really wanted more of this in the original cut, and they wanted more of the sort of graphicness, but it wasn't, I think, palatable to the producers or executives. Right?
So it's funny you mentioned this because we watched the beautiful Shout Factory version of this that came out just earlier this year. And a lot of people were hoping it was going to include the like original cut that you're talking about. They couldn't find it. The footage may be gone. But yes, the legends of this, of the like ridiculous gore factor, carry on still, as you've clearly heard it. Either way, it is a gruesome, disgusting scene.
It is very quick, but very traumatic. It's one of those where you want to be ready for it almost. I wasn't ready for that to be what it was, in a sense, right?
Yeah. It's time to go at this point, but Dr. Sam Neill says, hang on, they have their orders. What about my ship? Now, Captain Lawrence Fishburne literally says, fuck this ship, which is awesome. That was great. Yeah. But Sam Neill, again, in full-blown crazy mode, says,
you can't leave. She won't let you.
You just get your gear and get back on the Lewis and Clark, Doctor, or you'll find yourself walking home.
I am home.
Fuck, man. That's so creepy. Nailed that scene.
Yeah, they do a good job in that scene, the two of them, for sure. He's gone. He's completely gone. We knew it was happening throughout, but he is just beyond saving. He's there with his ship, and it's everything he can do.
Yep. Now, the crew is scrambling to get enough air canisters to breathe on the way home, and they've got enough. But the doctor hallucinates her son again and runs back into the core. Once inside, she chases him around until she ends up on one of the higher levels where, after seeing her own death, she walks towards her son, falls into a hole, and dies exactly the same way she just saw. So, nice job, idiot. Way to go.
I was angry. I was yelling at her and the screen while this was going on because it's clear that it was a hallucination. She should know this already. She knows her son's not on this fucking ship. So stop following all that bullshit and get yourself off. She had the oxygen tanks. The reason she was there is to get those oxygen cleaners or whatever so they could safely get home. And she just had to leave, but she didn't. It's at this point I'm like, is everyone going to die? Right? Is everyone going to have a gruesome hallucination death? And I also had a question, like, was Claire, the wife of Weir or Sam Neill, was she on this crew or ship was my other question. I was curious, like question. They hadn't answered sort of what her story was or why she was there. I was wondering if that's why he wouldn't leave, right?
I mean, we do find out more about her like in a second. Now, Sam Neill, speaking of which, finds the body, looks concerned for a minute, and then immediately has another hallucination of his own. And this is where we find out. It turns out his wife killed herself because he was obsessed with his work and their marriage fell apart. Understandably, he feels guilty about this. So less understandably, he rips out his own eyes. That's his reaction to this. I'm like, well,
in my research, I found out that there was also an extended scene of that.
Does he really get in there?
No, the suicide and the eye rip, I think. Okay. I think it was more the explanation or suicide. There was more to that. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. So we find out that maybe because the ship cost him so much, that's why he's so connected or can't leave there, right? It cost him his love.
Still not what I would consider a normal reaction. I get that you feel bad. You might want to hurt yourself even, but to rip out your own eyes, Pretty graphic.
I mean, we've seen the ship cause all kinds of people to do similar or other things. So I guess you can clearly tell he's lost control, and the ship is now in control of Weir's actions.
That's the ship's move. The ship is like,
Yeah.
everybody, eyes out.
I think so. Yeah. They only want you to be able to see what they can put in your head.
All right.
It's my interpretation of the ship possessed by this sort of.
Oh God! Well,
evil
that
being.
comes up later too, and I'm so excited for that part. According to Cooper, they're about 2 minutes away from departure, but just then, one of the crewmen, named Smitty, sees Dr. Sam Neill exiting the Lewis and Clark rather quickly. Turns out that one of the explosives from the Event Horizon is missing, and guess where the good doctor just put it? Now, Smitty finds it and flips it open just in time to see the timer reach 5 seconds, so it's so long, Lewis and Clark. The explosion effect is like surprisingly bad. Like I did not expect it to be that terrible.
See, it didn't make an impact on me. I knew it was coming. I was a little baffled why it didn't hurt the Event Horizon more.
Which it is like connected to pretty much. Yeah,
that sort of surprised me. I didn't notice how poor the sort of explosion was. It fit with sort of where I was feeling in the mood. But
okay, well, here's a better question though, because this is the point where for me the movie starts to unravel quickly. Because how the hell did Sam Neill get those explosives in the ship so fast? The motherfucker doesn't even have eyes.
he doesn't need eyes, I guess, because the
But
ship is helping him like do what he needs to do. I don't know. You're right.
He's deep in the bowels of the Event Horizon. All of a sudden, he's fucking leaving the Lewis and Clark. He fucking teleported in there or something.
Yeah, it's fucked up, right? It definitely is. Like as we progress towards the end of the movie, it really starts to lose me. Like we talked at the start, we talked at the start about how maybe this wasn't a super bad movie, and I felt tonally, I felt the performances were good, I felt the sound and music, and even the sci-fi and science were believable enough, right? Like for the first, I don't know, 3/4 of this movie, I'm completely engaged and down. But it really starts to fall apart here after the explosion of the Lewis and Clark, and very shortly we're gonna have more problematic shit.
Yeah, well, Cooper has been launched into space from this explosion. Now he's in a spacesuit. He figures his only shot to get back to the ship is to blow his air tank, which apparently works. I guess we'll find out later. Well, we definitely find out later. Captain Fishburne.
Hold on. So this is really like
we'll get to it. It's coming. It's coming later. It's ridiculous. I agree.
But what does he yell as he lets out his air as he tries to fire himself off this piece of space floating away?
I honestly don't remember. What was it?
Here I come, motherfuckers! Made me think of you.
That's fair. Yeah. So they're scrambling. Captain Lawrence Fishburne tells DJ to keep an eye out for Weir. He grabs a knife, says, "Don't worry about Weir. I'll take care of him." And then immediately gets killed by Weir. He jinxed himself right away.
Yeah, he turns around to immediately get choked and lifted.
Yeah.
Like Weir grabs him, sort of tosses him around, kills him, and then guts him and hangs him from the ceiling.
We see that in a minute. With the status of Cooper unknown, this is pretty much all down to Lawrence Fishburne at this point. Except I was like, side note, is Stark dead? What happened to Stark? Like, she wasn't there at all.
I wrote down the same question. She's just missing. Like, we haven't heard from her in a while.
Well, we immediately get the answer. The captain finds her knocked out on the ground. He gets her on her feet. Before they can go anywhere, Sam Neill does the supervillain chair turn, which is like unintentionally hilarious. Like, you mentioned the swivel chair. He spins around, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, come on.
I laughed out loud.
Yeah,
like,
man,
really
it's
hard.
hilarious.
And his face is now, not only has he like ripped out his eyes, it seems like there's other cuts and scratches, and it even seems like some of them are sewn up.
Now, here's my question about this. I'm pretty sure Lawrence Fishburne had to walk past that chair to get to Stark. How does he not notice Sam Neill sitting in the chair? Gory, bloody Sam Neill with no eyes and cat scratches all over his face.
Well, it's dark in there. Like, there's not a lot of light left. Most of the power's out.
They're looking for him.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out for Weir, he said.
Yeah, it's pretty dark. The captain's chair swivels, so if he has it on the right angle, maybe he walks by and can't see.
God damn. Now, this was the part where I laughed out loud because he's not looking great. Lawrence Fishburne asks him what happened to his eyes, and Sam Neill gives him the fucking Back to the Future. He literally says,
"Where we're going, we won't need eyes to see."
Come on, that's incredible. Now this is the point where we actually find out that the ship has opened a gateway to hell, like hell.
Beyond hell, it was an evil dimension, I think they say.
Yeah, well, now, according to Sam Neill, the ship is alive. And great news, they're its new crew. Forever.
That was creepy when he said it that way.
Yeah.
It was interesting seeing Neill in this sort of like turned really creepy role. I think it got delivered pretty well.
He did a good job.
Although
yeah.
it starts to fall apart. Like, it's really bad for me here. This starts to become the worst part of the movie for sure. The evil dimension shit seems just ridiculous, right? Like, I don't understand why that's what happened when you open this sort of gravitational wormhole thing.
Yeah, it doesn't really track per se.
No, I'm struggling with that. I know that lends itself to sci-fi horror, and it's kind of fun. But I don't know. They all have to be dead at this point, right? Like, everyone's done.
It seems like it. They're fighting back still. Stark tries to attack him, but gets quickly subdued. And before Captain Lawrence Fishburne can make a similar move, Sam Neill holds him at gunpoint with some sort of harpoon grappling gun thing.
I think it was the machine that they were using. It's like a bolt gun. They were using it to repair their ship earlier.
Okay.
So it plunges a sort of a thick spike through two pieces of metal to hold it together, but
Yeah.
it becomes a weapon of choice here.
He's about to open the gateway again when suddenly, in the most ridiculous turn of events that I can imagine, Cooper successfully arrives back at the ship, and he just happens to land on the exact window of the exact room that they're in. What the fuck? It's impossible.
So this had to happen, I think, to move the plot along, but you're right. This is where things start, like I've said for the last 10 minutes, things have been going off the chains. Things have really broken down here, right? Like, we're completely off the tracks. The train is derailed. Cooper shows up there, and what does Weir or Sam Neill do?
Oh,
here?
yeah. As soon as he arrives, he's gone again because Sam Neill shoots one of those fucking bolts at him, which, although it does not kill Cooper, puts a hole in the window, which causes him to be blown away from the ship by all of the air pressure escaping. So he's gone again, right?
Okay.
Theoretically.
I have a question for you here.
Shoot.
This part now made me kind of mad because they blow a hole through the window and the spaceship opens up. And of course, it starts sucking everything out, as you would expect, I guess.
Including Sam Neill.
Including Sam Neill. He gets sucked out of the window. But the crew members are not experiencing any of the things that Justin experienced when the hatch opened to pull him out into space.
That's a great fucking point. Yeah, none of them were bleeding from the eyeballs, nothing. You're right.
No, they're not experiencing any of the things you'd experience if you lost sort of that pressure and you were starting to be pulled into the vacuum. In fact, they're so strong, they're able to like pull themselves along a cable and out of that room to safety.
Yeah, Fishburne pulls himself, and he even manages to save Stark. And amazingly, somehow, Cooper is alive too, and he makes it to the front airlock. Which fucking how?
So
how? This is all bullshit. First of all, I'm mad enough that they teased us with a scat man.
Yes,
he came all the way back. He came back, and I was like, he came back just to die. Perfect. We hit the scat man. Fucking nailed it. But no, he's alive still. So with no scat man, and he makes it back. How? He got blown away from the ship twice, and he had to blow his air canister to get back the first time. How did he get back the second time? It's bullshit.
Yeah, it is interesting that you bring up Scatman because the director Anderson, when he went to sell this movie, he pitched it as The Shining in space.
You know what? I see it. I see the parallels in a lot of ways.
I thought the movie should have ended here. So,
interesting.
I thought when they shot out the window and Weir gets sucked out to space, I think they should have got sucked out too, and it should have just ended.
It's a draw.
It's just a draw.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's
Yeah.
gone. It's over. The ship's still there. Hopefully people don't fucking go deal with it again. But like, it's there, and there's potential problems. But I thought it should have ended in that, with Cooper maybe just floating away or whatever.
It's weird. There's kind of like era-specific endings. So the way that people were willing to have a movie end at different kind of generations and times, Quentin Tarantino talks a lot about this. Like, in the 70s, there were a lot of movies with dark endings, right? And that would have fit there perfectly. The 80s, complete opposite. Every ending is a happy ending. Everything ends the way it's supposed to. 90s, you get a little bit of both, kind of a mixed bag. But like, I think I would enjoy this movie more if it was in fact what you had said. And if it ended that way, like, I'm good with that, because it would have played into all the mythology they've already created about how like every rescue of this sort has ended in catastrophic failure for both ships. It's never been done. Like, that in a way would make more sense.
If it was true sort of sci-fi horror to me, I really wanted them all to go out in that way. It's not really having the ship win, but it's having it be unresolved in an unpleasant way. I don't like that we're continuing past here.
Yeah.
And it seems like the crew has a chance to survive and win.
Well, they have a chance, but they are not out of the woods yet. The gateway opening process apparently can't be stopped, so they're going to have to blow the ship in half using this explosive mentioned earlier. As they race to do this before the gateway opens, a lot of blood starts showing up. It's pouring out of the walls. It's in a giant tank, which bursts open. Shining reference also.
It is a direct Shining reference for sure.
This is all an illusion, much like the flaming crew member who appears just as Lawrence Fishburne arms the explosives and action hero dives through a closing hatch to safety. Maybe
so
not.
He's not dead, right? He dives to safety, But instead of going to the side of the ship that they hope to escape in, he goes to the side with that gravity engine, which is going to transport him basically to hell.
Yeah, well, he gets knocked down into the core in that section that you're talking about, but he realizes this isn't real. What he's seeing is not that crewman who died so long ago. And he's right, apparently, because the vision he's seeing transforms into a naked, hairless Sam Neill, who shows him the horrors of reality, which is basically a bunch of gory images, and again says the ship won't let them live. Now we get a fist fight between the two of them. Naked Sam Neill, who, did you notice, he's wearing a codpiece?
Didn't notice.
I froze the frame and everything. Sam Neill is not hanging dong, not in this movie. He's wearing a codpiece. He's like a Ken doll out there. He knocks down Fishburne. He thinks he's got this whole thing all wrapped up. He starts taunting him by saying, "Do you see?" But Fishburne gets the last laugh. He says, "Yes, I see," as he activates the explosives, which blows the back of the ship apart and sends Stark, Cooper, and the front of the ship on their way home.
I don't think that part of the ship explodes, right?
Of course it does.
I don't think so. I think the gravitational engine part of the ship, the middle of the ship explodes, which separates the two, and the one half kind of goes back to safety. I think the other ports to this evil fucking place.
I mean, I guess the ending of this movie, which we're about to get to, would maybe lend some credence to that, because you get the impression that this thing is still out there causing mayhem of some kind. 72 days later, we wrap this thing up. A rescue ship makes contact with what is left of the event horizon and prepares to board. When they do, they find Cooper, Stark, and Mr. Justin somehow still alive in the gravity tanks. How that fucker is still alive, I have no idea.
Yeah, and what kind of life is that guy going to have? No eyes, all of his veins are out of his body. And
horrific PTSD.
Yeah, like the worst.
One of the rescue team opens Stark's tank, tells her that she's safe and the other crew members are fine. "They're with us," he says, and we get one more quick scare as the guy from the rescue team flips open his helmet to reveal Sam Neill.
Yes.
But it's just a hallucination. Some of that standard disorientation from the gravity tank, no doubt. And they appear to actually be safe. Or are they?
I know it does leave it open, right? Are they bringing part of that evilness back to the sort of Earth or other planets? I don't know.
Are they still the hallucinations permanent? I don't know. But you know what? We'll never know because a hatch door closing takes us to the credits, which feature, I wrote down Prodigy-esque late 90s electronic. Is it actually Prodigy?
I think it's Prodigy, yes.
Could
I think
be,
it's Prodigy.
Which does not fit the tone of everything that we just saw at all. This is not music for this kind of movie.
Yeah, it's too industrial, right? It didn't seem like the mood-setting horror that we had just experienced.
What a weird choice for us to go out on here.
Yeah, so the reason I looked up and read more is I wanted to know if there was another ending. I really felt like something else should have happened after the scene in the captain's quarters or the sort of bridge area of the ship. And I didn't find that information. I know that there were a lot of scenes that were taken out to make it more palatable for a sort of regular audience. But I would have been interested to see sort of the original ideas, or if the director had been able to go with what they wanted.
Well, again, I feel like if Shout Factory couldn't find this footage, it doesn't exist, because they are normally so thorough with their releases. So
yeah, it's not out there for us to see.
Yeah. Well, that's it. We've reached the end of this movie, and it is time to rate it as we normally do. The way this works, we rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. We do it 2 times, 1 to 10 for how bad it is, 1 to 10 for how enjoyable it is. And the ultimate goal is to find a movie that is 10 out of 10 on both scales, or as we call it, the Crit 20. And I'm going to start. I did not think this movie was that bad. I don't even think it's a bad movie. I was pretty into it. The end, it falls apart at the end. Let's call a spade a spade. Mm-hmm. It's chugging along well, and then with about 15 minutes to go, shit starts getting ridiculous. But overall, for badness, I have this as a 3.
Holy crap.
I actually feel like this movie might be too good to be on our podcast. Again, it bombed at the box office, hence why we looked at it. But overall, it's a pretty effective, sci-fi horror movie. I was really captivated by a lot of it. Very creepy. They did a good job with the atmosphere. I don't think it's that bad. I'm only giving it a 3. What do you think?
I felt that way halfway through, 2/3 of the way through.
Yep.
I was like, this isn't a bad movie. I'm enjoying it. I'm liking where we're going. The last 20 minutes of the movie just really fucked it for me. I hated the choices. I hated where they went. I didn't like that they didn't all die. I didn't like,
most of them do. Most of them do,
but I didn't like that rescue at the end. To me, the ending pushed me up to a 6. So
that's still not that bad.
It's not horrible. It still fits into a bad movie rating scale for me. It's still there. I would love to see a different cut of it.
Me too.
I'd love to have
yeah.
a conversation with Anderson, the director, or I'd love to see, like, I know that this now probably has a cult following. Like, I think there's a lot of people who really, really, really
Dude,
like this movie.
this Blu-ray was fucking sold out. Like, I had to wait forever. Now, we live in Canada too, so to be fair, that kind of Shout Factory releases are delayed here, but in general, I had to wait like months to get this
get a
thing.
hold of it.
Months after it came out in the States. Now,
sure.
now I have to ask, how enjoyable did you find it on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah. So I thought it was tense. I felt like there were some good scary moments. I felt the acting, sets, sound were all quite good, right? I enjoyed those parts of it. The ending again really drew it back for me. They had affected both my bad rating and my enjoyability rating.
Sure.
So I ended up landing on a 7 for enjoyability.
Okay, see, I have it as a 9. This
Wow.
clearly the
Holy
bad
shit.
things that affected you in this movie did not affect me as much. Like, I was less upset and disappointed. The ending is ridiculous. The last few series of events, we just talked about it. They're fucking absurd. A lot of problems there in terms of like making it believable and like whatever. But I still, like, start to finish, I enjoyed myself. Like, I will definitely watch this again. Would you watch this again?
This was my second time watching it.
Yeah.
So, but I would not
Gonna
take
go
it
for
off
the
the
hat
table.
trick?
I would
Okay.
watch it again. Yeah. I would like to watch the sort of cutout scenes and other stuff too. I wish there was a release that included those, like that it was one. You can watch them on the Blu-ray as a separate.
Yeah. You want like an
entity,
edited version.
But I want an edited version that sort of has it all in there to kind of come together. But I'd watch it again. How about the beer this week?
Here's the problem. I don't like root beer. So like that it's just like it strikes 1, 2, and 3 right there. Like, this beer has a very strong root beer taste to it. If you like root beer, you will probably enjoy this beer very much. I do not like root beer. Therefore, like, everything about this, I am just against. It's not for me. This is not a beer for me.
It's interesting. The sarsaparilla definitely plays a prominent role in the flavor profile of the beer. It hits you like immediately with kind of the sweet root beer flavors, and then as it sort of sits and you swallow, you kind of get a depth of root beer flavor as it goes down. I also noticed some pretty nice sort of coffee and chocolate flavors that are a part of their stout that sort of hit later in the sort of drinking or flavor profile. I really enjoyed it, but I do love both root beer and stout, so it's sort of a good connection for me.
I've had some good stouts, and you know what? Like, I've had a couple of Halo beers I like. Again, they tend to cater to the more like IPA heavy crowd. Not really my thing.
I love their pale ale. It's called Magic Missile, a little D&D reference for us.
I've had Magic Missile. Magic Missile's pretty good.
For me, it is just one of the best sort of aromatic, citrusy, fruity pale ales. So I love that. Their New Wave IPA, I also really enjoy as well. So definitely check out Halo Brewery.
Well, there you go. And that's going to pretty much do it for this week. Next week, though, we're watching a little movie called Hell Comes to Frogtown.
That sounds amazing. What is Frogtown?
I don't really know. Never seen it before. But what I will tell you is the movie stars professional wrestler Roddy Piper. And
is
I
he in a
believe
kilt the whole time. This is gonna.
Oh
be
my
great.
God, I hope so, but I don't know.
Oh.
I believe the movie takes place in some sort of like a post-apocalyptic thing with like mutants that look like frogs, and I believe he may have to like fuck his way out of trouble. I'm not really sure. I think it's like there's a heavy sex element, so the whole thing sounds ridiculous. It's a Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray release, which I fucking love what they do. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
If you have not already, please follow us on social media at the BMB Podcast on Twitter and Instagram.
If you'd like to send us any suggestions, you can sort of slide into the DMs on our Instagram and Twitter, or you can send us an email at thebmbpodcast@gmail.com.
We'll be back next week, but until then, I'm Cooper,
And I'm Nolan.
and we'll see you next time on Bad Movies and Beer.
Keep it weary.
Did we ever say that his name was Martin Weir? Infinite space, infinite terror.